Hello and welcome to this video in which we'll be looking at the questions and solutions of a reading comprehension exercise from CAT 2024 slot 2. This was the passage on human carnivore attacks and reading of the passage I've discussed in an earlier video. Let's go through the questions and let's try to understand how to solve each of them. So let's begin with question number 1. One says, according to the passage, which of the following scenarios would most likely exacerbate? Like words like these, you need to know the meaning of. Exacerbate means increase, contribute to, make something worse. To exacerbate something means to make something worse, to increase the intensity of something. The frequency of carnivore human conflicts. This question, you don't even need the passage. I think that if this question is just given to anyone and then they're asked to pick up the answer, even without reading the passage, it makes sense that only one option will lead to greater frequency, greater chance of human carnivore attacks, and that is option 2. I think it's that easy a question. It's a common sense question. Because if you're attempting to photograph wild animals within secured viewing areas, it's secured viewing area. It is meant for viewing. It is meant for taking photographs. So that is not going to increase the chance of attacks. Implementing food waste management strategies to prevent wild animals being attracted to human food sources. So if wild animals are not attracted to human food sources, then they will keep to themselves. That is going to reduce the chance of human carnivore conflict. C is addressing the impact of climate change. If you're addressing climate change impact and if you're trying to reduce the impact on wildlife, again, that should make wildlife happier. So C also cannot be the correct answer. D is such irresponsible behavior. Read it and the sentence itself seems like it is irresponsible behavior. Unleashing dogs by pet owners in areas with known high concentration of large carnivores. Of course, that is going to lead to attacks. So this is that easy a question, probably the easiest question in this entire slots CAT paper. Moving to question 2. 2 says, according to the passage, what is a significant factor that contributes to the habituation of carnivores to human presence? If you go back to the passage, you will realize that in the third paragraph is where habituation is being talked about. That from here, then there are animal attacks provoked by people taking pictures. So one is taking pictures. 2 is feeding them in natural settings, which often end with animals being euthanized out of precaution. Why? Because a quote has been given. Eventually, the animal becomes habituated to people. So when you go into their area, you start taking pictures with them, you are connecting with them, you give them food. They find human beings are not something to be afraid of. They can be close to them, close to humans. And when that habituation happens, then the fear decreases and that leads to greater concentration of attacks. And that is what has been written here. Bad things happen to the animal. And the folks who initially wanted to make that connection don't necessarily realize that. So this is what the passage says in the context of what the question is asking. So if you now look at the options, there can be only one correct answer. Let's go from option A. Option A says the natural aggression exhibited by carnivores exacerbated by human interference. Natural aggression is being talked in the first paragraph and there human habituation is not being talked about. So A is beyond the context of discussion of the question. B says increased scarcity of resources. That is talked about in the second to last paragraph. This is the third paragraph. So not in the same context. The predatory perception of humans as potential prey. That is talked in the second paragraph. Whereas habituation is talked in the third paragraph. And that's why C is not the correct answer. D says the reduction in carnivores' instinctive fear response resulting from their reliance upon human provided food. So giving food to animals has been discussed in the habituation with people paragraph, and that's why D is the only correct answer. It's that simple. Go back to the passage, pick up whatever is written there around whatever the question is referring to, and that is the correct answer. So 2 is also a pretty simple question. Question 3 is, given the insights provided by Pentiriani's research and Wilkinson's treatment, which of the following conclusions can be drawn about the relationship between heterogeneity, landscape heterogeneity, and human carnivore conflicts? I think, again, if you go back to the passage, it becomes very simple. Last paragraph is what talks about landscape heterogeneity. Here in this quote, it says there are a lot of working landscapes. Like the last paragraph, it says there are a lot of working landscapes in the global south that are really heterogeneous. What do they mean by heterogeneous? These working landscapes are interspersed with carnivore habitats, forests, and savannas, which creates a lot more opportunities for these encounters. When they're talking about these encounters, they're talking about human carnivore encounters. So when there is heterogeneous landscape, like there's a working landscape, and in the middle you have got carnivore habitats, that leads to more human carnivore conflict and attacks. And if I look at the options, only one option says exactly the same thing written in that paragraph, and that is option C. The diversity and intersperssion of working landscapes with carnivore habitats in rural areas increase the statistical probability of encounters between humans and carnivores. If you read A, B, and D, you realize that all three options are saying opposite of whatever is written in that last paragraph. So it's a very easily eliminatable options kind of a question. So 3 is also a very simple question. So 1, 2, 3, all are very easy questions in this exercise. Fourth question is also an easy question. And everyone would have gotten this correct as well. Who had concentrated on the question and answered this properly with proper thought would have actually gotten this correct. Had IIM Calcutta not number 1 given a wrong answer key for this question, and had they not been adamant and obstinate to not listen to several, when I say several, I mean thousands of objections raised against the solution of this question. First, let me explain the correct answer, and then I will tell you what IIM Calcutta told everyone is the correct answer. So question 4 says, which of the following statements, if false, would be inconsistent with the concerns raised in the passage regarding the drivers of carnivore-human conflict? So double negative question. Which of the following statements, if false, would be inconsistent? So if false would be inconsistent means if true would be consistent. So we are looking for that option which when true, which when accepted, would be consistent with the concerns raised about drivers of human-carnivore conflict. That what is the motivator behind human-carnivore conflict, which have been mentioned as drivers for carnivore-human conflicts, which option is consistent with it, as given in the passage. So let's look at option A. A says climate change has had negligible effects on the frequency of carnivore-human interactions in the affected regions. If we go back to the passage, it clearly states here that experts believe climate change also plays a part in the escalation of human-carnivore conflicts, but the correlation still needs to be ironed out. So exact correlation needs to be ironed out, but it plays a part. Whereas option A says negligible. Negligible means you can neglect it. So can you neglect climate change? No, it does play a part. The author is clearly stating this in the passage that it does play a part, which means this is, when true, inconsistent with whatever the passage is saying. Whereas the question is, if false, what will be inconsistent? So if true, this is not consistent, that's why A cannot be the correct answer. B says carnivores lose an instinctive fear of humans when consistently exposed to human food sources. This is testified by what we discussed in the previous question. And in fact, it is given as the answer in question number 2 and also present inside the passage. So if D is true according to the passage, then so is B. B is also going to be true according to the passage. So B most likely is the correct answer. Let's still read C and D. C says predatory attacks by carnivores are a common occurrence. Opposite of that is given in the passage. That it clearly states that predatory or predation-related attacks are quite rare, only accounting for 17%. So it's not quite common. So option C says opposite of whatever is given in the passage. So that's why C cannot be the correct answer. And D says human efforts to avoid risky behavior around large carnivores have proven effective in reducing conflict incidents. Although the author is advocating for the fact that human efforts, humans need to take effort not to indulge in risky behavior, like going and taking pics or giving them food. All these risky behaviors around large carnivores should not be done. But the passage does not explore that whether people have stopped doing it and then any statistics based on after they've stopped doing it, what effect has it had. So D is not given in the passage. So D can be inferred further from the passage. So it comes very close to being the correct answer. But because B is given in the passage directly, it is, if true, consistent with the passage. It means if it is false, it will be inconsistent with the passage. That's why B should be the correct answer and D should not. Now, what did IIM Calcutta do? IIM Calcutta gave option A as the correct answer. Now, my biggest problem with this kind of mistake, a lot of times, there have been a few instances where I have not agreed with the solution given in CAT paper questions. And most of the times I've been able to say that, okay, maybe the paper setter has a slightly different thought process. But here I cannot reconcile with that. I think it is just that IIM Calcutta has just refused out of ego issues to admit their own mistake. You know why? Because if A is the answer, C should be the answer as well. Because opposite of A is given in the passage and opposite of C is given in the passage. So had they misunderstood the question, or had they said that if false would be inconsistent means that I have to look for something that is not given in the passage, then A and C are equally correct. But if they mean whatever the question states, then B has to be the answer. If they mean whatever the question says, and the question states that which of these is true is what I have to find out, and they are saying no, B is not the correct answer, then they should change the answer key for question number 2 as well. But they are not. They are giving D as the correct answer for question 2, and they are not giving B as the correct answer for 4, which makes no sense whatsoever. So when someone behaves so irrationally and illogically, the only conclusion that you can actually draw is that their response is emotional. So I'm Calcutta's response was emotional and not logical. Their emotion was that I need to protect. The answer that I said initially was correct. And I will not listen to anyone what they're saying. So basically they have to close their ears, like kids do when you shout at them and they blah 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 blah. They do that so that they can't hear what someone else is saying. That is precisely what I'm Calcutta did with this question. So if you have gotten this question wrong by marking option B as the answer, then don't worry, you have solved the question absolutely correctly. If you've gotten this answer correct though, according to I'm Calcutta's answer key, then your logic is incorrect and you need to have a relook at where you have gone wrong. Thank you.